capitalism produces a time without any qualities, an empty time that you have to fill with something. So your work, you fill the time. Time is empty. Is that clear? The second difference is the difference of the place. For instance, before capitalism, we don't have what we today known as the urban life. Urban life also came along with the invention of electricity, communication systems, larger concentration of industries. All the modern cities are industrial cities. People migrate from villages to the cities, searching for job. They settle there and work in a factory and so on and so forth. They form a new community, an urban community. Earlier, our jobs were largely generational. One generation will continue that, next generation continue that job. With capitalism, what happens is that capitalism produces a job market. So, with capitalism, in that sense, the modern education has begun. So, modern education's primary function is not to emancipate the people by educating them. The primary function of modern education is to produce skilled laborers, produce a class of laborers for the industry. So they keep on producing more and more laboring force or multiple skill sets. There are managerial class, there are skilled laborers, semi-skilled laborers. All of them are produced through a much more organized system. So you will go to a schooling system, you learn something that you can sell in the job market. By selling that you earn the money, and capitalism always overproduce the labor. There is always a labor excess in the market, so the buyer can always bargain. There is always a cheap labor available. The colonialism was actually an attempt at getting more and more cheap labor along with the raw material. Is that clear? So new urban centers are started, which also means that a new system from joint familial system to a nuclear familial system, because the joint families were actually integral to the sustenance of feudalism. But people have to move to a new city. They are not born there. Nobody born in those cities. They migrate from villages to these cities, and large concentration of people in one place. Unlike villages, they are lateral. They are spread out. Cities are actually concentrated. That's where actually the understanding about the mass comes from. Faceless people, lot of people. Nobody knew each other. Unlike a village, everybody know each other. So we see people as a mass. So many people. So mass economy, mass culture, all of them actually came along with that. With urbanity, a new problem began. A problem in the sense that a new sense of alienation has begun. Earlier you have a familial system, a system of village, everybody knew each other. In the factorial system, nobody knew each other. They are a completely new community of different groups from different parts of the country, different geography. People come together. For instance, Mumbai city for that matter. It's all migrant laborers actually built the Mumbai city, or Calcutta for that matter, all the colonial cities for that matter. So there is a complete change of the notion of space. There is a new word had coined called urbanism, urbanity, with capitalism. So our experience of the space has changed. With advent of electricity for that matter, our notion of day and night has changed. Earlier, before electricity, mass electrification, public electrification, there is a clear distinction between what is night and what is day. With the advent of electricity and rapid urbanization and urban electrification, what happens is that our earlier biological understanding about the night and day is not anymore possible, because our senses cannot actually really clearly distinguish between what is entails of night and what is entails of the day. Because if you have an artificial light that produce an impression of the day. So our understanding about day and night has changed with electrification. Our understanding about communication has changed with telecommunications. Our understanding about travel has changed with widely networked roads and railway systems. So every aspect of our life, and capitalism is not that something happened in one part of the world. With colonialism, capitalism has traveled across the globe. Capitalism created what today known as a kind of a global network. Earlier, people might have traveled. We may have some travelers traveling from Greece to India and writing something about Greek and so on. But colonialism produced a global network. Everything is globally linked. That with advanced shipping technology, advanced communication technology, with the advent of aeroplanes and other things, the notion of space, the notion of globe, notion of time, etc. has completely changed. So Benjamin is talking about, or Marx is talking about this shift, this prognostic shift value is this. Capitalism changed the way in which we understand the world, the way in which we experience the world, the way in which you even understand agriculture itself. That itself is transformed. Agriculture actually slowly transformed into an industry in itself. In our part of the world, still it is largely manually organized, but advanced capitalist state, agriculture and animal husbandry, both are an industry in itself. So industrialism convert everything into industrial mode. Even agriculture become an industrial mode of production. Even though human labor is involved in both, our understanding about agriculture itself has changed. Our basic understanding about time has changed. Our understanding about space has changed. Our relationship has changed. Because we settle in a new urban space where you know each other only as laborers working in a factory. Is that clear? So your community is a very different community. You are a nuclear family system. So from joint family system to a nuclear family system. So in that sense, capitalism has fundamentally changed the way in which we experience the world. So that is the qualitative change. Quality in the sense of not good quality or bad quality. That's what actually we are talking about. There's a qualitative shift of human life. It is not merely about how many countries are actually industrialized. He is not actually interested in the quantity question. Marx was really more interested in this quality aspect of capitalism, wherein which it has changed human destiny, human experience in fundamental ways. Is that clear? So that's what the mode of production change means. So in that sense, are you able to follow me? I'm making it clear, right? If any of you are actually not able to follow me, just please stop me. Yeah. So this is what actually the first part actually means. So in that sense, actually, capitalism also has changed the way in which we understand the state. Because earlier in the feudalistic mode of production, it was largely ruled by kings or feudal lords. There was no state. With capitalism emerged what we today known as modern democratic system. Capitalism has an equalizing power because capitalism looked at people as atoms, individual as a singular atom. Feudalism looked at people as communities. Capitalism produces a new kind of an individualism, an atomism we call. So there's if you remember that I was talking in the morning session that the notion of individual artist, an artist actually kind of signing something, selling something, it came along with capitalism. So that a notion of a singular, unified, atomic individual is produced by capitalism. Yeah. Right. That's correct, but we all have a sense of individuality as a singular atomic unit. We generally like, unlike a feudalistic mode of production, where in which we think only in terms of community. Here, actually, how do we think about ourselves? We think that, like the famous statement, I think, therefore I am. The Descartesian statement. There is a thinking, cohesive, coherent individual who is actually the controller of his acts. You are right, it is a myth, but we all actually have that sense of individualism. Every individual is actually notionally equal. Everybody have one vote. Everybody collectively vote for a state. You partake in the state. It was not there before. Earlier, a king's son or the relative become the next king if son is not there. So it's a generational thing. The state has changed with capitalism because everybody partaking in it, state keep on changing it, and so on and so forth. Laws are changed. Our modern legal system has emerged. Modern metric system has emerged. What you today know as kilograms, earlier it is dozens, because agrarian economy, things actually always calculated through measurable, dividable measures. But you have a global scale is invented because it is important for actually trade. So earlier we measure, but we measure in a very different sense. We count, the counting was very different. Today we actually count in a very different way. So all of them has changed. A person who actually kind of lived, last generation actually used to count differently than actually. Today we only count dozen, etc. in terms of eggs and so on and so forth. 1 dozen egg. And so otherwise those calculation system has changed. But those are industrial measuring systems. From there we have begun more of an organized metric system and so on and so forth. So every aspect, from minute level to the most macro level, in terms of state system, legal system, prison system, everywhere the change has taken place. Earlier, for instance, if somebody commit a crime, nobody is sent to the prison. Basically, you will get punished, you will get beaten, you will thrown by stone or killed or whatever. But prison, for instance, is a modern system. The idea is that you can be reformed. You can send you to prison for a sentence and you can come out as a reformed citizen and so on and so forth. Earlier it's only punishment. So prison actually, for instance, actually like, it is a place where you are what is it called? Discommunicated. No, you are excommunicated from the social world. Earlier also there was, for instance, people who are what we call madness. People who are mad. Every society actually had some kind of a mad people. But in modern system, the madness become a disease, or an illness. Madness has to be segregated from the modern world. Asylums are begun. Hospital systems, what we today know as hospital systems, are begun with industrial capital. So I'm saying every aspect of the human life, institutional, micro level, macro level, everywhere a drastic shift has taken place with the advent of capitalist mode of production. Marx is talking about that. So that's the prognostic value. He is seeing what is happening in England especially. That was the most advanced industrial state of Europe at the time of Karl Marx, and he was looking at what is happening in the industrial cities of Europe and some part of the US, and he is speculating that this is going to fundamentally alter the way in which human beings had lived their life till that moment. He actually kind of predicted that the acceleration in which the world is going to change with capitalism is unprecedented. Because industrial mode of production, actually the exploitation level also going to increase, both the natural resources as well as the human resources. With industrialization, much more intense form of exploitation of nature is going to take place. much more intense form of human exploitation is going to take place, even though, this is the most important part, even though industrialization as such came as a progressive force. The idea was that through industrialization, we can reduce the intensity of human labor, we can produce things in large number, so that people will get more leisure time. People will get a system that help us to liberate ourselves from manual labor. Through industrial production, actually we have more time for leisure activities and so on, but industrialization on the contrary produce more inequality than equality. Does that make sense? It is not to say that feudalism was better, no, that's not the point I am trying to make. What I am trying to say is that industrialization, that is where actually the Benjamin's idea comes from. So this particular aspect of industrialization, wherein which two kinds of exploitation takes place. And Marxism, according to Benjamin, was focused only one form of exploitation, that is economic exploitation of the laborer class. Benjamin's major departure from the Marxist philosophy is that he argued that all the Marxist thinkers of his time, all of them had always thought about exploitation only in terms of economic exploitation of the laboring class, how the capitalist class exploit the labor of the laboring class and accumulate wealth, what kind of deprivation that it creates on the worker. But Benjamin argued that more than or equal to economic exploitation, there is also a sensorial exploitation of the worker. This is the argument that Benjamin is trying to make in this essay. There's an economic exploitation of the people happening. Everybody knew, we experienced that. But there is also, capitalism brings what Benjamin calls as sensorial deprivations and sensorial excess. Two kinds of things that happens with capitalism. One is you are sensorially deprived. The deprivation is very simple to understand. For instance, Benjamin's understanding about modern period is in that sense very neurological. You know, how our nervous system respond to the industrial and artificial stimulations. Does that make sense? Yeah. Am I going too fast? It's fine. So Benjamin's argument is that there is definitely an economic exploitation that is happening in the world that is important to address. But more than economic exploitation, there is also another form of exploitation that is so central to the present condition of the world that he calls as the sensorial deprivation and a sensorial excess. One is a deprivation, another one is an excess. So let me explain that. So Benjamin actually, developed his understanding about sensorial deprivation from the theories of Freud. Freud, Freud, no? Freud is the kind of a father figure of psychoanalysis. The Freud had actually studied, a lot of patients after World War I. Basically, people are suffering from shell shock. Today we use the word shell shock, right? What exactly shell shock means? Shell shock actually means the shell, the military in war, the shells actually fall and it creates this intense sound and heat. And very often the army men suffer from the trauma of the shell shock. Sometimes they lose hearing ability because the sound is so heavy that they lose their hearing ability. So when Freud has studied so many war veterans, people who had partaken in the First World War, and found most of them suffer from the shell shock. It becomes like they cannot lead their normal life after that. So Benjamin takes actually that particular instance from Freud and argue that the shell shock is not an exception in modern times. Shell shock is the norm of modern life. Freud studied it as an exception, a war it is happening. But he is saying that the modern experience, in modern period, in industrial age, shell shock is the norm. It is what actually that we experience every time, every moment. So basically, is it making sense? I will explain what he meant by a couple of examples, but let me kind of try to unpack that argument a little further. So what exactly he is saying? He is saying that we think that our consciousness that we have about the world is our entry to the world. We understand the world through our consciousness. Without consciousness, we cannot understand the world. We cannot recognize the world. Consciousness is what makes us understand the world better, more deeper, and so on and so forth. Benjamin argues that, in fact, consciousness is not an enabler. Consciousness is, in fact, is a disabler. I'll explain. So we think that consciousness is the fundamental thing through which we experience, understand, interpret the world. But consciousness, according to Benjamin, is a block than as an entry to the world. It is not an enabler. It's actually something prohibit us from engaging with the world. What is the argument he is trying to make here? He is saying that because we encounter the world in everyday experience, we encounter the world like a shock experience, we develop a system of numbing ourselves. Our consciousness, rather than enabling us to see, enabling us to experience the world, numb us to experience the world. It produces a certain kind of a numbness about the world. Our consciousness becomes not an enabler, but a consciousness becomes something that numb our experiences. Consciousness becomes an anesthesia that we have about the world. Unlike consciousness supposed to be allowing us to experience the world more intensely, but rather consciousness becomes something that prevents us from experience the world in its entirety. Because if you experience the shock all the time, you get into trauma. So the consciousness actually becomes a protector of your brain. It won't, even though you see something, it won't register in your mind. It won't produce some kind of an impact on you. I'm going to come to that. So, a couple of examples. For instance, Benjamin had given the example of a factory. A condition of a factory is the example of the sensorial deprivation, where there are excess sound, excess light, and there is always a sense of an accident always present in the factory. If a factory worker is working in conditions that the severe sound of the machines, extreme light, heavy heat is produced. If you go first time to a factory, you won't be able to stay there because it is so much of sound and so what happens once you start working in the factory? What happens is that you get conditioned to that. You not anymore recognize it as a sound that is disturbing you. Your consciousness creates a shield that protects you from actually like each time you are experiencing that sound. When the sound is there, you develop some kind of unhearability. The heat is there, but your skin develop a way of not responding to that stimuli. The light is there, excess light is there, but your eye develop a way of not seeing the world, not seeing the light. This is not only the condition of factory. If you the modern cities for that matter, the amount of noises, amount of things that happens around us, we have an ability of not hearing them. Other example would be this is an example that sometimes I give. For instance, if an individual, a fully conscious, ethical, compassionate, passionate, intense person who is really walking from here to say 1 kilometer, and you saw many things on the way you are walking from here to a tea shop for that matter, but very few things that register in your mind. Somebody is lying on the road, you may see, you think that it is my responsibility to, immediately you make some assumption that maybe he is drunk, maybe whatever, why should I get into trouble, you just walk away. There is a beggar, you see, you won't think about begging as a problem, where it is coming from, what is it, what kind of condition of life that person have. We see all of these things, but we hardly register any of these things in our mind. If everything is going to register in our mind, we won't be able to move. We will be like getting stuck to each of these things that you view. Start thinking about it critically, you develop a critical consciousness within you and so on and so forth. But do you rather train yourself not to see than see? How not to see, how not to hear, how not to experience the world. The consciousness actually train you how not to register things. You see, but you won't see at all. That makes sense? Second example I will give from the other extreme, what Benjamin is taking, the sensorial excess production of sensorial experience. So we have a problem. We have not a problem. We have a situation. We have a situation in which our brain cannot segregate between a natural stimuli and an artificial stimuli. How do we understand the world? We have 5 senses, or whatever, 5 or 6. So a light reflects on something, and you get a signal from that light, you decode in your brain as light. You seeing things, always there is a decoding. Or something, a pin actually happens, pain actually comes, you decode that and so on and so forth. So there is always a stimuli, but the point Benjamin is trying to make is that, but our brain cannot segregate between a natural stimuli and an artificial stimuli. Light is an artificial stimuli. Unlike the sun is a natural stimuli. So what happens is that the sensorial excess happens because of this. For instance, a worker who is working in a factory in the most deprived condition, it's not about a factory. The best example in our time would be a call center. It is the maximum sensorially deprived place. Basically a flattened clinical space in which nothing is there. Basically that you and your cubicle. You are absolute atomized, same aesthetics, a global aesthetics. There is no stimuli, completely deprived of the outer world. You are completely segregated from the world. So even though there is no excess heat or excess sound, again you are sensorially deprived in that working condition itself. As a counterpoint to this thing, capitalism also produced some kind of a sensorial excess in terms of mass media for that matter, where you will be flooded with sensorial excess in window displays to all kinds of advertisements on the street to television to all kinds of things that you are always a consumer of excess visuality. So there is a deprivation on the one side, there is an excess on the other side. So that is why a worker who is actually completely deprived of his life will go after the thing and go and watch a Shah Rukh Khan movie or a Salman Khan movie or a mass movie, and he will temporarily get satisfied. He has some kind of an experience. It is produced, or he'll go to a wonder park or a whatever. Always there is a sensorial excess is continuously produced in terms of visual stimuli, and our senses cannot segregate from an artificial stimuli and a natural stimuli. What is that exactly it means? Let me give an example. For instance, you know the Gulf War. Gulf War is the first war that was live telecasted. So you can actually see you can sit in a room, and you can see the Americans are bombing the Iraq city, and there will be people narrating in the backstage. The actual visuals of the war, and actually destroying cities, are actually killing people and so on. But we will watch them as if we are watching a Hollywood movie. So we cannot segregate, because these images actually so much they are conditioned to see the war through a mass-produced industry. We desensitize ourselves to see it as that something distant happening. There is we never, or the way in which excess violence in the movies that desensitize our ability to respond to an actual violence. If you see most of the popular movies, the kind of excess violence become a component of that. So what happens is that we cannot really kind of distinguish between an actual war and a war that is represented either by a Hollywood movie, or a war that is actually kind of an actual war that is transmitted by the television. So with continuous exposure to excess of violence, what happens is that we get desensitized to the violence itself. So this actually kind of a fascism had used this element, this desensitizing element, as a tool to control people. So it is a kind of a spectacle. For instance, the fascist spectacle, what Benjamin calls. Every week, these huge parades that Hitler organizes, the kind of Hitler's radio speeches, his very performative appearances, the kind of the film that he has produced, all of them kind of create some kind of a heroic image to the leader. That is what he calls the aestheticization of politics. So aesthetics actually here used as that something, because both the word aesthetics and anesthesia comes from the same word. So aesthetic become an anesthetic thing, certain ways in which. So the burning question of Benjamin and others of that time was that how the people can actually kill their neighbors. The people who are lived for centuries, suddenly like one community actually can be branded as enemies, and people can just kill them. Where do you develop that vocabulary of violence? So all we are actually looking at this question. There are two points I am trying to say. One is there are two things that happens with capitalism. He is trying to understand in terms of our neurological response to the world. In the neurological response, human being as such cannot distinguish between what is artificial and what is natural. Every stimuli. That's why actually we cry watching a movie, for instance. We identify, there is an association that you make, because sometimes it is forget that it's a representation itself. There is a certain kind of association that happens. So we cannot distinguish between these two elements, artificial and the natural stimulus. So Benjamin's argument is that because the capitalist system has produced on the one side some kind of a sensorial exploitation of the worker by the working system, as well as produce sensorial excess by urbanity, visuality, all kinds of other modes of representation and so on, so that people lose their ability to engage with the world intensely. So people actually kind of develop, instead of actually hearing the world, people develop some kind of a, people learn how to not to hear, how not to see, how not to experience, how not to, every senses we can add that. Is that clear? So this is the one point that you have to keep in mind. So Benjamin is taking this thing from the Marx's prognostic value reading about capitalism, wherein which Marx said that it is not that all the world become capitalist or all the world become industrial, but capitalism has brought something drastic to human experience. It has completely altered the history, human history itself, because it has accelerated the exploitation. Today, what we today known as the kind of global crisis, planetary crisis, what we call ecological crisis, planetary crisis. What is it called now? What is the word for it? Anthropocene. People say it is almost planet is dying. Post-human. All those actually comes from that. So basically, that Marx actually kind of seen that. His contribution was actually, according to Benjamin Weber, he has foreseen that what is going to happen with rapid industrialization. So some people argued that, people later worked actually saying that there's a book called Marx's Ecological Vision, where in which some people actually kind of completely worked on actually kind of early manuscripts of Marx in order to understand his prognosis about the future of capital, what it is going to do to the planet and so on and so forth. So that is the context in which Benjamin is kind of making. This is the larger theoretical context. This is the larger Marxian framework in which Benjamin is actually proposing something with regard to the fascicization of aesthetic or aestheticization of politics versus politicization of art. Two things you have to keep in mind. The first one is aestheticization of politics. That's what fascism does. Against that, Benjamin wants to politicize art. So if you read the text, actually both the large part of the text is about aestheticization of politics, and he's thinking about how to politicize art. Okay? This is the context. We'll come to that, what is aestheticization of politics and what is politicization of art, etc. is not something simple. It's not like you make some political art. It is not that simple that he is proposing. So this is the introduction that Benjamin is giving. So he is talking about a huge shift in the world order, irrecoverable shift. Nobody can actually kind of recover the world from that. It's a change in the mode of production. Some people actually say that it's more than mode of production. People actually argue that it is a change in the episteme. The word that is used by people like Michel Foucault says that it is a new episteme, modern episteme. The way in which we understand the world has changed. An epistemic shift. You are in a different episteme altogether. The people before modern episteme actually understood, experienced world very differently than the way in which we understand today. So for Foucault, for that matter, all these systems, prison, medicalization of illness, hospitals, educational systems, all of factory, all of them actually came as part of this epistemic shift. The Foucault's classical example, in Discipline and Punishment, Discipline and Punish is a very interesting example Foucault had given. It's called Birth of Prison. Discipline and Punish, Birth of Prison. How modern prison system has begun. So he gives this very graphic narrative. If you read that book, the first couple of pages are this very graphic narrative about a medieval punishment. Criminals are actually brought to the public square, and it's an open declaration of punishment, and people either they killed in front of people or people thrown at it, and everything it's a historical record he is reading, and he says that and modern so he says that is more of a barbaric way of actually treating killing the criminal. The modern system is actually much more advanced, more civilized. There is a process. You will send people to reform and so on and so forth. But he says that these are from two different episteme. Both are equally violent. Maybe modern system is more violent than the older system, but modern system actually produces a new understanding about punish. Punish less but punish effectively. So this is there's a new way of punishing the people. It actually comes from a different epistemic order altogether. So Foucault's major argument in that context is, because it's quite linked, Foucault's text and this. So Foucault's major argument is that this epistemic shift. Once you are an episteme, it appears natural to you, the world. We cannot actually really understand which episteme that we are in, because we are inside that. So we think that that is what the world is. Even though the world is constructed, we think that world is that it is what it appears. For instance, that Foucault argues that maybe I shouldn't go to Foucault too much. I'm just saying that Foucault argues that, for instance, we think that it is impossible to change the world. World is so big, so huge, so static, so built. It is impossible to change. How are we going to change the world? But we forget that world is built. Whatever we see as the world is a built world. But we think that these are the natural world. These are built keeping in mind interest of a particular class, but we think that this is the natural order. So episteme produces whatever construct certain kind of a natural effect. As if this is the natural order. The episteme's primary function is to produce some kind of a naturalness to the world that we are living in, even though that world is constructed keeping in mind the interest of the ruling class, keeping in mind mind servicing the ruling class. All cities are built, everything is built keeping in mind the interest of a particular class, but it naturalizes it. So it is because of that it is important for us to, the Benjamin's argument is that we have to denaturalize the world. This naturalization is the function of this episteme. Exploitation, we think that it is an order. We think that it is okay, right? We sell our labor and we get paid money, but there is exploitation actually become almost like a norm. So that is the argument. So we have to denaturalize. These are constructs, these are discourses. We need to denaturalize, because the discourse always try to produce some kind of a natural effect, natural impact and effect to the construct. Let me give one small example. I will move from there. For instance, take something like women's right. So if you know the little history of actually like women's voting right and so on and so forth in the, it's not that every time the woman had the right to vote in history. Only in the middle of 20th century actually that many places actually women actually got the voting right for that matter. So the argument about women not getting voting right is actually a natural argument. Even though it is a gender social construct, it is always justified through certain kind of a naturalization, certain biologization of actually female bodies. By selectively appropriating certain differences. For instance, actually like man is naturally stronger than woman. Man is faster than woman. Man is more rational and woman is more emotional. There are these all are constructs. But it produces, it takes certain differences in terms of the different kinds of, how do you measure the strength? For instance, a child birth is the most, need the most strength in terms of both mental strength as well as the physical strength for a child birth. But you won't count that as the measure of the strength. We measure the strength, what actually privileges, what helps the man. Let me kind of give a very, very interesting example. Some feminists argued that if man naturally if man menstruates, there will be 100 books that would are written by now saying that how nature purify man every month and woman is never get purified. Because it is on the woman, it has a different narration altogether. Even there is something natural, it is kind of a constructed of saying that if man is actually menstruating, then the narrative would be completely different. It says that unlike woman, we have a mechanism wherein which we regenerate, we are more purer than the woman. But because of it is the woman is the dominated gender, it becomes another narrative altogether. So even though there are physical, biological differences, the narrativization of these differences is the one that you have to. The denaturalizing actually means that you have to denaturalize, because there is a tendency, there is a selective appropriation of actually things in order to produce certain kind of a naturalness to the exploitation itself, naturalness to the domination itself. Various kinds of domination is really kind of justified through naturalizing domination itself. For instance, even today, it is quite surprising, even today many women believe that the husband has the right to hit them. If you, for instance, or Sabrimala controversy is a classic example. The woman actually saying that we don't want to go, we are impure. Why actually it's our fate and so on and so forth. How this happens? Because of the discourse actually produces, and discourse operate only by convincing the victim. His victimhood is natural. There is something logical to the oppression and so on and so forth. So that is what actually what actually means the denaturalizing. These are constructs. These are built, but what is built is projected as something natural, unchangeable, a natural order. But it is changing. I'm not saying it's not changing, but I'm saying that is the way in which system function. So that is the thing that you have to keep in mind. That makes sense? So it is in a sense, Benjamin actually arguing that we need to denaturalize the constructs. How do we do that? That's the question. There are two things. One is the aestheticization of politics. The classic example actually in front of us would be that somebody like Narendra Modi. and the kind of um, um, the way he constructed persona. Everything is actually kind of a stage managed. Every if he goes to some place, everything actually for a production of certain images. So Narendra Modi actually operates through an image culture. Actual image create the image. It's the more than the actual persona. But actually, I'm not actually saying that good or bad. I'm just saying that if you can see what actually Benjamin meant by the aestheticization of politics is that wherein which through using this visual technique, visuality, how one can construct a more than a larger than life image of a persona. How Hitler constructed himself. So this spectacularization, a very small, something like that. If you look at something like G20, for instance, the most recent, the kind of a spectacularization that has happened in the name of G20 is a classic example of how aestheticization of politics actually. I think I need a break. Aestheticization of politics actually has happened. Let's take a break. Maybe we can stop here today. We can continue tomorrow. Feeling a bit lost. So this is just an introduction. We have to now still read the text. So come tomorrow on time. We have at least we should read a couple of paragraphs, especially the question of aura. Secondly, the question of photograph. There's two things that we have to discuss tomorrow morning session. Then we will do some kind of a little bit of practical exercise in the afternoon tomorrow. Let's start at 10 o'clock, 10 to 1 we will try to cover as much from this text, read some part and we'll continue tomorrow. But you got some understanding, right? Yeah? Something. Okay. Okay, let's meet tomorrow 10 o'clock. Please read. Even if you don't understand, it's okay. But please try to read it. Wherever you are finding a terminology or anything difficult, just mark it and bring it to the class. Have a discussion about it. Today we just had a discussion about mode of production, changing the mode of production. I want to extend that argument, but I think I'm getting a little disoriented. But what I'm trying to say is that today's time that Benjamin is writing again in the beginning of mass media. He's writing in the 1920s. But today we have a different order altogether. We have another epistemic change after digital, after the development in information and communication technology. So we have a different kind of an epistemic order. So we need to kind of think about we are studying this thing to understand our present better. So we have to bring that debate into our present context. The post-industrial mode of production. We are not anymore in the industrial mode of production, even though, like Marx was saying, even industry is the one actually who was maximum number of people is employed, but we actually passed the industrial mode of production to a post-industrial mode of production. Which actually means we are in the realm of more of a speculative capital or service industry. Today, what dominates the world is not the industry. The simple example would be that all the richest people in the world are actually people who are actually like in the service industry. Even in industry, Adani's for that matter, they won't really produce anything. Their money comes from a speculative trading. It is not actually about what you produce. Nobody knew. You everything actually based on actually how do you manipulate the market, the stock market. It is a speculative capital. So it is not anymore the more the concrete industrial capital. It is more more amorphous capital, more immaterial capital. We are in the age of an immaterial capital, which need different rethinking of some of this proposition. So we actually crossed that industrial age today. At least last from 70s onwards, we have shifted into another episteme, which we will discuss eventually. But I am saying that is what the point is. So we are thinking about this mode of production to understand actually where we are now. And our notion of time and space has changed with this advancement in technology, new kind of communication technology, and so on. So our understanding about labor has changed. Industrial, the labor is not anymore industrial labor. We have an imagination about the labor earlier that is very different today. So these changes you have to understand in order to develop artistic strategies to address our time. Without understanding what kind of a larger as well as micro level changes that is taking place in our world, we won't be able to intervene into that world. So we need to have that understanding in order to make some kind of an intervention as artistic practitioners in this world. It's not like some theory learning here, but that's not the idea behind it. We need to have that, if you want to understand how time, the notion of time, space, material, etc. has changed in today's time, the meaning of these are changed in today's time, how are we going to engage with them? How are we going to intervene into that? How are you going to make them part of an artistic knowledge production? So we need to develop a particular kind of a technique, a particular kind of an ability to understand the changes that is happening. Because we are in the midst of that change. And very often it is very, very perplexing for us what is happening. Our notion, for instance, notion of art itself has changed drastically in the last 30 years. So these changes are interconnected. It's not that something just happens in the art world. These changes in the notion of material, notion of art, etc., is also integrally connected to the larger changes. These are discursive changes. The speculative capital and speculative practices in art is interconnected. There are so many interconnections are there. So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to unpack these connections that otherwise appears as separate spheres, separate areas. But if you start unpacking it, we start seeing how these are interconnected. How these interconnections actually produces what we experience as the world today. So that is the purpose of so the technology comes in that sense. So art and technology comes in that sense. So Benjamin has a very, 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 very interesting proposition in terms of what according to him constitutes the politicization of art. That is very different than the way in which the conventional Marxism thought about politics of art or politics of aesthetics. It's quite different. So which we will discuss tomorrow morning with the text. This is just an introduction that I just want to give you about the text. The neurological, the deprivation, excess, etc. is not discussed in the text, this particular text, but I am just giving you some kind of a philosophical background of the text. The text actually comes from that. And Benjamin's understanding about art also comes from one source is his own engagement with surrealism. That is the one source of his inspiration. Second one is that he was also maybe only one philosopher who looked at technology as something has a radical revolutionary potential. Even though technology very often is used by the ruling class to dominate and control people, but he doesn't see technology in itself as a problem. He actually sees a lot of possibilities in technology, because the reason is that he was very much part of the Russian avant-garde of that time. Before Stalinism became the norm in Russia, early Russia. Benjamin had visited Russia, and he has seen how the Russian avant-garde actually developed a new method of art making, a collective form of art making. There's no artist figure. The artist actually there's a book by Benjamin called The Moscow Diary that actually talks about his visit to Moscow. So the Russian constructivists, they are sometimes they work as a newspaper reporter, sometimes they work as a factory worker, sometimes they do work of an ethnographer, sometimes so they did all kinds of jobs. There is no artist figure. So Benjamin's understanding about the artist figure actually comes from the Russian factographer. Artist as a factographer. It's not like one, he has seen some kind of a divestment of the artist figure. Whether even the capitalism as an investment of the artistic figure, he saw Russian avant-garde as the divestment of the artist figure. The artist is kind of a person who is dealing in multiple fronts. He is functioning. He was also very close to people like Vertov, the person who made the movie Man with a Movie Camera, which we are going to see in the part of the workshop, and Eisenstein, Sergei Eisenstein. He was very close to both of these filmmakers. He was also very much impressed by the work of Charlie Chaplin at that point in time. He saw a lot of revolutionary potential with the Battleship Potemkin and Chaplin's movie and Man with Movie Camera, etc. He saw a lot of potential of using technology as a radical revolutionary tool. He was also he has his theorization is informed by many things that is happening at that moment in history. So he is responding to that. He saw what is happening in the newly emerging Soviet Russia, Soviet Union at that point in time, and he is seeing what the surrealism is trying to do, again going beyond the consciousness. If you remember, I am saying consciousness is understood as that's something numbing you, not allowing you to see further, to go closer. Consciousness, that's something that will make you distance from the world than allowing you to enter the world. So surrealism is a movement that is trying to go beyond the shield of the consciousness. So it's called surreal. So he was also influenced by one side, the Russian constructivist. They have very, very different understanding about art. And surrealist, on the other hand, they are actually trying to go beyond the realm of consciousness and expose what Benjamin may call the structural unconscious of the time. So surrealists are actually trying to what is the structural unconscious of fascism. So that is what actually surrealists are doing. Those are very, very different he was also very much influenced by Dadaism. So he is responding to a particular time, a very, very, very crucial time in history, in between two world wars, the emergence of the consolidation of capitalism and fascism together, coming together of liberalism and conservatism together. So this is a very, very crucial moment in history, and we are also witnessing similar kind of moment in our life. Across the globe, there is a neoliberal, neoconservative coming together, and we are actually in that sense it has a lot of resonance to the time that we are living in, what Benjamin is talking about. A different historical time, different responses to that, but our time is also very close to that time in a way. That time it was liberalism and conservatism. Today it is neoliberalism and neoconservatism. So this is what actually we are trying to understand through this text. So we are not thinking something about 20th century, we are thinking about our own time through this text. Yeah? Because there are a lot of resonance to our time. All these texts, what we are discussing. It is not about any other history that we are talking about, we are talking about our own time. We are trying to understand our own history more intensely, more nuancedly, more in terms of its micro operation of power, how power operate through capillaries, invisible forms. That's what we are trying to unpack. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Again lecture, so it doesn't look like a workshop. So tomorrow hopefully some change. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. I'm sorry, I'm so used to speak in English. I can have a regular conversation in Malayalam, but I get a little stuck if I speak in Malayalam. I will try, I'll rehearse a little more tomorrow. I will do, because I just came back from there, so I'm still time. Tomorrow I will try to speak more in Malayalam. But whenever I go to a lecture mode, it's very difficult for me to articulate in Malayalam. So it's not that I want to speak in English. I love speaking in Malayalam, but it's just the way I train myself. So that's the only reason. Otherwise, I prefer to have a conversation in Malayalam. So that's what I'm saying. If tomorrow onwards you can come individually or a small group and can have a conversation with me in Malayalam, whatever language that you are comfortable with. I write, read in Malayalam. Only I have a problem with Malayalam. So please feel free. Make use of my presence here. I am going to be here from morning to evening. And if you want to have any conversation, never hesitate. Because I am here to converse with you. So please feel free to do that. Yeah. Okay.